What if Alice in Wonderland isn't merely a strange children's story about talking animals, magical cakes, and a tyrannical queen? What if Alice's fall down the rabbit hole represents one of the oldest spiritual journeys ever told? The descent from the familiar world into the hidden chambers of the unconscious mind. Because long ago, Alice followed the white rabbit into Wonderland. Ancient heroes, goddesses, shamans, and mystics were entering mysterious worlds beneath the surface of ordinary reality. Inanna descended into the underworld. Persephone was taken beneath the earth. Orpheus crossed into the realm of the dead, and countless mythological heroes entered caves, forests, labyrinths, and invisible kingdoms where the normal rules of life no longer applied. And almost every time the journey beneath the surface became a journey into the self. So today, we're going to explore the hidden wisdom within Alice in Wonderland. And we're going to look beyond the playful nonsense to uncover a story about identity, transformation, consciousness, and the strange inner world we enter whenever the person we thought we were begins to dissolve. And of course, this doesn't mean Lewis Carroll consciously intended every spiritual or mythological interpretation we'll explore. Stories often contain symbols far older and deeper than the person writing them may realize. And sometimes a story becomes timeless precisely because it touches something universal within the human psyche. Alice's journey begins on an ordinary afternoon. She's sitting beside her sister, feeling restless and bored, when suddenly she notices something impossible: a white rabbit wearing a waistcoat and carrying a pocket watch. But it isn't merely the sight of a talking rabbit that captures her attention. It's what he says. Oh dear, I shall be too late." The rabbit is anxious, hurried, and completely preoccupied with time. And Alice, without stopping to consider where he might lead her, follows him. This is the first threshold. In myths and fairy tales, transformation often begins when something unusual appears within an ordinary world. A mysterious stranger arrives. An animal begins to speak. A door opens where no door existed before. Or a character notices something everyone else has ignored. The white rabbit is the invitation. He represents the small but persistent signal that calls us beyond the boundaries of our familiar lives. It may appear as curiosity, dissatisfaction, a dream, a crisis, a spiritual longing, or the quiet feeling that there must be something more. And the invitation rarely explains where it will lead. It simply appears. Alice could have watched the rabbit disappear and remained safely beside her sister, but she doesn't. She follows him, and in doing so, she leaves behind the known world. This is how many inner journeys begin. We follow a question. We follow a feeling. We follow something that we don't yet understand, and suddenly we find ourselves standing at the edge of an entirely different reality. Alice reaches the rabbit hole and falls. She falls slowly, passing cupboards, bookshelves, maps, and familiar household objects embedded within the walls. The scene is dreamlike because she's moving away from ordinary consciousness while fragments of the ordinary world remain suspended around her. And this descent is one of the most important symbols in the story. In mythology, descending beneath the earth often symbolizes entering the unconscious, the hidden realm where forgotten memories, fears, desires, and rejected parts of the self are held. The conscious mind likes clarity and order. It creates categories, routines, and explanations. But beneath that carefully organized surface exists a far stranger landscape. Dreams don't obey the laws of logic. Emotions don't always respond to reason. The subconscious mind speaks through symbols, exaggerations, memories, sensations, and contradictions. And once Alice enters Wonderland, logic no longer offers her the protection it once did. She has entered a world shaped more like a dream than a rational society. And this descent also reflects the ancient spiritual pattern sometimes called the journey into the underworld. In the Sumerian myth of Inanna, the goddess passes through 7 gates as she descends into the underworld, and at every gate she's required to surrender something she once used to define herself. Her crown is removed, her jewelry is taken, her royal garments are stripped away until she stands without the symbols of her identity and power. The descent removes what is familiar. It dismantles the self that we have constructed. And Alice's journey does something very similar. Almost as soon as she arrives in Wonderland, she begins changing size. She drinks from a bottle marked "Drink Me" and becomes tiny. She eats a cake marked "Eat Me" and grows enormous. At different moments, she becomes too large for the room, too small to reach the key, too tall to feel comfortable, and too confused to understand what her natural size is supposed to be anymore. On the surface, these scenes are amusing and absurd, but they also capture something deeply human. How often do we feel too much in one environment and not enough in another? Sometimes we might feel too loud, or too sensitive, or too ambitious, too emotional, or too visible, or perhaps too small, too uncertain, too powerless, and too easily overlooked. From childhood, we begin adjusting ourselves according to the world around us. We learn when it feels safe to speak and when it feels safer to remain silent. We learn which emotions are welcomed and which ones create discomfort. We learn to expand in some places and contract in others. And after years of changing ourselves to fit different rooms, relationships, and expectations, we may begin asking the same question Alice eventually asks: who in the world am I? Alice can't answer this question because everything she once used to define herself has become unstable. Her body has changed, her surroundings have changed, the rules have changed, even her memories no longer seem reliable to her. And this is one of the central mysteries of spiritual transformation. Before we can discover who we truly are, we often have to encounter the uncomfortable realization that many of the identities we've been carrying were never entirely ours. They were shaped by family, culture, expectations, fear, survival, and the desire to belong. And when those identities begin to loosen, the experience can feel liberating, but it can also feel deeply disorienting. Alice meets a caterpillar who sits upon a mushroom, smoking a hookah, and he asks her one of the most famous questions in the entire story. Who are you? Alice tries to explain that she hardly knows anymore because she has changed so many times since the morning. The caterpillar doesn't comfort her or give her an easy answer. He continues questioning her, almost as though he's forcing her to sit with the uncertainty. And perhaps that's because identity can't always be solved through explanation. Sometimes we have to remain inside the question long enough for something deeper to emerge. The caterpillar itself is a symbol of transformation. A caterpillar exists between two identities. It isn't yet the butterfly it will become, but it can no longer remain exactly as it is. Its transformation requires the complete dissolution of its previous form. Inside the chrysalis, much of the caterpillar's body breaks down before being reorganized into something new. And although we often romanticize transformation, true transformation can feel less like gracefully becoming a butterfly and more like losing the shape of the person we used to be. The old life no longer fits, but the new life hasn't fully appeared. The old beliefs begin falling away, but the new understanding hasn't yet stabilized. We are between worlds. And Wonderland is, in many ways, a world of in-between spaces. Nothing remains still long enough to be trusted. Directions change, conversations circle back upon themselves, characters contradict their own words, and Alice repeatedly attempts to use ordinary logic in a world that refuses to obey it. And then she meets the Cheshire Cat. Unlike many of the inhabitants of Wonderland, the Cheshire Cat appears strangely comfortable within the confusion. He disappears and reappears at will, sometimes leaving nothing behind but his smile. Alice asks him which way she ought to go, and the cat replies that the answer depends upon where she wants to get to. Alice says she doesn't much care where, and the cat tells her that, in that case, it doesn't much matter which way she goes. This exchange might sound like nonsense, but hidden within it is a remarkably clear piece of wisdom. A path can only be meaningful in relation to an intention. When we don't know what we value, what we're seeking, or who we wish to become, almost any direction can appear equally convincing. We may follow other people's expectations, chase goals that don't fulfill us, or remain in constant motion without ever asking where the movement is taking us. The cat also tells Alice that everyone in Wonderland is mad. Alice protests that she doesn't want to go among mad people, but the cat tells her she can't help it because they're all mad there, including Alice herself. Perhaps Wonderland is revealing something we often resist acknowledging. Every human being sees reality through the filters of their own memories, fears, beliefs, and desires. We like to imagine that we're observing the world exactly as it is, but we're often seeing interpretations shaped by the inner world we carry. And when we begin awakening to our own patterns, we may realize that what once appeared completely rational was something driven by old wounds, unconscious habits, or inherited beliefs. The recognition can be humbling. It may even feel a little like madness. But becoming aware of our conditioning is often the beginning of freedom from it. Alice continues through Wonderland until she arrives at the Mad Hatter's tea party, where time itself has stopped. The table is covered with cups and plates, but the guests never truly finish their tea. They simply move from one seat to another, repeating the same rituals and conversations. The Hatter explains that he has quarrelled with time, and now it's permanently 6 o'clock. Always tea time. Nothing develops, nothing concludes, nothing moves forward. This endless tea party can be seen as another image of the unconscious mind, because the parts of us that remain unhealed often exist outside ordinary time. A painful experience may have occurred many years ago, yet part of the nervous system can continue responding as though it's still happening. The adult may know that the danger has passed, but the frightened child within still sits at the table repeating the same emotional pattern. We move from relationship to relationship, opportunity to opportunity, and year to year, yet somehow find ourselves drinking from the same cup. This is how unconscious cycles work. The external details change, but the inner patterns remain frozen. And healing begins when we recognize that we've been moving around the table without truly leaving it. Wonderland is filled with characters who seem trapped inside their roles. The White Rabbit is always late. The Mad Hatter is always having tea. The Duchess is always finding a moral. The Queen is always ordering executions. And Alice, who initially tries to adapt herself to everyone around her, gradually begins seeing the absurdity of the entire system. The Queen of Hearts is one of the clearest symbols in the story. She rules through fear, emotional volatility, and constant threats. Off with their heads! The phrase is repeated so often that it becomes almost meaningless, and we eventually discover that many of the Queen's orders are never carried out. Her authority depends less upon actual power than upon everyone's willingness to be frightened by her. And this is how many inner tyrants survive. The harsh voice within may tell us that failure will be unbearable, rejection will destroy us, or making the wrong choice will ruin everything. It speaks dramatically, it demands perfection, and it threatens punishment. And because this voice sounds powerful, we rarely stop to ask whether its authority is real. The Queen may represent the part of the psyche that tries to maintain control through fear. She doesn't listen, she doesn't reflect, she just reacts. And anyone who challenges her is immediately condemned. Yet, as Alice grows in confidence, the Queen's power begins to shrink. This is important to note because the Queen herself doesn't fundamentally change. Alice changes. At the beginning of the story, Alice is confused by Wonderland. She constantly questions herself and attempts to follow rules that make no sense. But gradually, she begins trusting her own perception. She recognizes injustice. She challenges contradiction. She stops assuming that every authority figure must know more than she does. And this transformation reaches its climax during the trial of the Knave of Hearts, who has been accused of stealing the Queen's tarts. The trial is chaotic and completely irrational. The sentence appears to have been decided before the evidence has even been considered. Witnesses give meaningless testimony, rules are invented whenever convenient, and the entire court behaves as though nonsense becomes truth when spoken loudly enough. Alice, however, is no longer willing to participate. She's had enough. She begins growing again, but this time her growth is different. Earlier in the story, changing size made her frightened and ashamed. She worried about taking up too much room. Now she grows while speaking the truth. When the Queen demands that the sentence come before the verdict, Alice openly challenges her. And when the court turns against her, she finally sees the inhabitants of Wonderland for what they are. You're nothing but a pack of cards. In that moment, the illusion collapses. The cards rise into the air and rush towards her. But Alice wakes to find herself lying beside her sister, with nothing falling upon her except leaves. The terrifying kingdom has disappeared. The Queen has no authority in the waking world. The court has no power. The rules were never absolute. They only seemed real while Alice remained unconscious within the dream. And this may be the deepest spiritual message within the story. Awakening doesn't always mean escaping the world. Sometimes it means seeing clearly what has been controlling us. The fear that once appeared enormous is recognized as a card. The belief that once defined our life is recognized as a story. The authority that once silenced us is recognized as an illusion we're no longer required to obey. But this doesn't mean our experiences were meaningless. Alice returns from Wonderland changed. Like the heroes of ancient myth, she has entered another world, faced confusion, confronted power, and returned with a deeper understanding of herself. This pattern is sometimes known as death and rebirth. The old identity descends. It's tested, dismantled, and transformed, and something new returns. We can also view Alice's journey through the symbolism of alchemy. Alchemy is often remembered as the attempt to transform lead into gold, but many spiritual alchemists also understood it as a symbol for the transformation of consciousness. Before a substance could be purified, its existing form had to be broken apart. The alchemical phrase solve e coagula means to dissolve and recombine. First, the old structure dissolves. Then, something new can be formed. Wonderland dissolves Alice's certainty. It breaks apart her sense of size, identity, logic, authority, and direction. But through that confusion, she begins developing something far more important than certainty: discernment. She learns to question what doesn't feel true. She learns that authority without wisdom is merely performance. She learns that being confused doesn't mean she has lost herself. And she learns that she doesn't have to remain small simply because the room was built for a smaller version of her. Perhaps this is why Alice in Wonderland continues to speak to us today. Because sooner or later, most of us fall down a rabbit hole. Sometimes it happens through spiritual awakening, sometimes through grief, relationship breakdown, parenthood, illness, burnout, or the collapse of a life we thought would last forever. Suddenly, the old map no longer makes sense. We change size. We question who we are. We meet strange parts of ourselves. Time behaves differently. Old fears become queens, and forgotten emotions appear like creatures from a dream. But the rabbit hole isn't necessarily a punishment. It may be an initiation. It may be the invitation to travel beneath the surface of your life and discover which beliefs are truly yours, which roles you've outgrown, and which inner authorities have been ruling through fear. And perhaps the goal isn't to make Wonderland completely logical. Perhaps the goal is to become conscious enough that its confusion no longer controls you. So as we close this first journey into the hidden wisdom of stories, I'd like to leave you with a few questions to ponder. Where in your life have you been making yourself smaller so that you can fit inside a room you've already outgrown? What inner voice has been shouting, "Off with their head," convincing you mistakes, rejection, or change must be feared? And who might you become if you stopped asking the world to tell you your proper size? Because the moment Alice remembered her own authority, the Queen became a playing card. And perhaps there are fears within our own lives that appear powerful only because we haven't yet recognized what they're made of. Thank you for joining me for this first episode of Hidden Wisdom in Stories. In this series, we're going to continue exploring the ancient myths, spiritual teachings, psychological truths, and hidden symbols woven through the stories many of us have known since childhood. As we move through these stories together, we may discover that they aren't simply tales about imaginary worlds. They're maps of the inner world. And sometimes by following a character into the forest, through the wardrobe, down the rabbit hole, or beyond the edge of the known world, we find a path leading quietly back to ourselves.